Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I am your host, Mike Veerman. We have our friend and trusty producer, Max Kerman. We also have our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham. Erica's not joining us today. Holidays, hanging out. You know, we're in that stretch. It's actually, for our listeners, I guess we should say Happy New Year, because they'll be hearing this in the new year. We're recording this on New Year's Eve. It is currently December 31st. And I guess we'll get into what everybody's got planned for New Year's Eve, what that even looks like in a pandemic. But yeah, first though, I want to say off the top, Max, I don't know who did this, but I got a delivery to my door. I go, that's weird. And it was addressed to me, to Mike Veerman. I mean, like, usually anything gets delivered is addressed to Danica. And so I opened the box and I'm like, what? And I received the pill from Nick Nurse, indoor-outdoor ball.
It's not blown up.
It comes deflated, and I've still got to blow it up.
I was going to say, it really looks like a pill. Yeah, the shape of it.
Yeah, I'm not hooping anytime soon, so.
Oh, that's amazing.
So thank you.
A little Christmas gift for you, Mikey.
Well, thank you. Thanks to whoever sorted that. I imagine it was you, Ash, whatever that was. But thank you.
Well, and I'm assuming you wouldn't be humiliating me live on air because I haven't received anything yet. But of course, I'm not at my house. Thank you.
Mike's the host of the show.
Oh, that makes sense.
So,
yeah. No, Ash insinuated something might be coming. But yeah, I don't want to count my eggs before they're hatched or whatever. Thank you in advance, possibly.
Shane is currently spending the holidays up at a cottage. You're up north, so your basketball is probably sitting on your porch at home here in Hamilton. Hopefully, it's still there when you get home.
I have my sister monitoring any porch pirates, so hopefully it's safe.
But yeah, guys, it's New Year's Eve. Max, what are you doing for New Year's Eve?
Well, after this pod, I'm going to go jam in the garage.
It's like your thing now.
At my neighbor's house. So basically across the street from where I grew up, my neighbors Alex and Eli, who played in my first high school band, they're back living at home because they're kind of both like teaching abroad, and we've gotten the band back together. So basically we've moved from their basement into their garage. The garage is open, so it kind of goes out into the laneway. All the neighbors come, hang out. And it's been really fun because we've just been playing kind of covers. And I was actually talking about this with Aaron Goldstein, who's a musician friend of mine, because he really wants to come by because he saw that we were doing like Beatles songs and the Stones and stuff. He's like, when's the last time you just got together just to jam and nothing matters? I'm like, it's probably been a decade, because every other time I've gotten together for some musical reason, there's always something on the line. Like, something is important. We're trying to write a song, we're rehearsing for a gig or whatever. This is just like, nobody shows up rehearsed. Nobody shows, like, people just kind of show up with like their instrument, and then you're like, anyone want to do Jumpin' Jack Flash? And then like, okay. And then you kind of like struggle your way through the first like 2.5 minutes. But then by about the third minute, and you're on like verse number 7 because you just kind of keep looping it. You're like, all right, we sound fucking amazing. It's great. And and so Jonathan and Johnny Deschman, who played bass in my high school band, he's there. This other guy, Will, also takes lead vocals. So it's like, the pressure's not on me to like do all the singing and dancing and performing. But I will say, some of the neighbors have come by and watch, and the rush of having like 4 or 5 people that have known you your whole life watch you and get into it is still pretty awesome right now.
Yeah. Man, are you gonna still record it and repackage it and sell it eventually?
We're not gonna do that because it's genuinely not great. But Ash is already talking about we should make some merch, because if there's one thing Ash likes, is like we should totally make some merch for this.
Does your garage band have a name?
We don't have a name yet. We're gonna work on that, maybe today even. But actually, I will say I am kind of pissed off though, because, and maybe you guys can help me see the light here a little bit, because clearly I don't understand. I was talking to Tony in our band, and I was like, Tony, you're in Toronto, you should come. Because Tom Moffat, our trumpet players, come by. He's like, yeah, that sounds great. Let me know. And then I said, okay, today 4:00. He's like, oh, bro, it's that's dinner time, and it's Christmas, it's New Year's Eve. I don't want to be in the doghouse with Scarlett. I'm like, what the fuck? You've spent every fucking day with your family. You have not been on tour one fucking day. Who gives a shit if it's New Year's Eve? You're gonna see her tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and for the next 6 months, and you've seen her for the previous 9 months. If you don't make it home for dinner, who gives one flying fuck, Tony? Come to the fucking gig. Jesus Christ. I couldn't even respond to him. I was so furious. I was like, Jesus.
You thought that in your mind. You didn't just unleash that to him.
No, I did not text him back. I just wanted to complain.
What if it was Christmas Eve, though? Would you understand Christmas Eve?
Like, Barely. I mean, Christmas Eve maybe a little bit more, but in 2020, what difference does it fucking make?
In some ways, Max, though, it makes more of a difference because we don't have any special days that you try to make the unspecial days special. I know you're a cynical guy, Max, but
okay,
it's the way us family men think.
It's funny you say that because I think the divide is so fascinating because I know exactly what Max is saying. Like, these are arbitrary days. They're made up things. They're kind of like, what does it matter essentially when you're spending all this time together? It's the whole like, let's not make a big deal about dinner for your birthday. Let's just try and do dinner all the time. And so I get it, but I also know what Shane's saying where it's like, I guess if we don't have these things, then it's just an endless sea of days altogether. But I don't know.
I like my Fridays to feel like a Friday. I like Saturday to feel like a Saturday. I like every day to have a vibe. I like the holidays to still exist.
Yeah,
you guys used to get together on Christmas Eve and party, and I always found that so weird to
Christmas
me.
Night,
Even like
Christmas
in the
night.
Before times, you would do that.
That was Christmas night. Christmas, it was AJ.
Like Christmas Day night, right?
Yeah, it's like after we were all done with our families, we would all get together for just like friend time after everything winds down, and then everyone like 9 o'clock on Christmas night would go to AJ's place / Max's place, and then we just all get drunk. Man,
yeah. To me,
the
that
old
was
world.
so unfathomable. Just because to me, Christmas has to feel like Christmas for the whole day, into Boxing Day and into New Year's Eve.
The other thing too is there's like a kid thing that matters. I could never, even if we weren't in a pandemic, I couldn't go to Max's on Christmas night. I wouldn't want to. I'd want to be with. That does change. So it's like you do want to like be in those moments with your kid and all that. But yeah, no, Max. Like as a guy that has been indoors with my family for months and months and months, I'm very jealous that you're out jamming in a garage band. I think that sounds so damn fun. It's so pure.
It's amazing. I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying it. It's like the only thing I have in my life right now, so it's good. Yeah.
I didn't mean to laugh at that, by the way, Max.
No, it was like the saddest statement ever. Yeah. We all just kind of like we just kept it moving. It's the only joy in my life right now. Anyway.
No, I laugh okay, so I don't cry. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't mean to laugh at you.
No, it's all good. But what are you guys doing for dinner tonight? I mean, for New Year's Eve.
We're some of the Champagne wives have set up like a Zoom call, I guess, and so Danica's preparing some trivia, some multiple choice trivia that will happen on the Zoom. There's also a Raptors Knicks game on that I might have like one eye on the Knicks game and then one eye on the Zoom. You know how that goes. Shaney boy.
I'm just learning about the Zoom thing now. I somehow haven't heard of it.
I guarantee you Alex is in the group that they were discussing it. I guarantee
So
Alex.
She just wouldn't tell me? My own wife isn't telling me things now? Like, this is strange.
Well, maybe you guys have a family plans. You were saying that you want to go to bed at 9, so maybe she didn't, I don't know. You have to talk to her.
Yeah, the internet connection's not the greatest here. I'm sure it's in the queue. And she's about to read it somehow. But yeah, okay.
Well, this is, I think, a good launching point, though, to talk about this brewing scandal that's happening in our country with a politician that is working remotely or was trying to work remotely, like you, Shane. Mike, set it up.
All right, so Canadian political scandal is happening right now for our American listeners or people in the UK or anywhere else in the world. Premier Doug Ford is under pressure after he admits knowing about his finance minister, Rod Phillips' trip abroad for weeks. Where did this guy go? I don't actually have that information.
St. Barts.
St. Barts, that's it. A place where the wealthy like to vacation. So essentially in Ontario, we are in like various degrees of sort of like drowning under the positive COVID cases that are popping up. So things are in lockdown. They're asking families to make sacrifices. And this guy scurries off to St. Barts in the middle of December. I guess he always vacations down there for Christmas. And then he had a series of tweets that went up on like Christmas Eve and leading up to where he's by like the fire and he's got the gingerbread house made and he's basically saying, I'm sorry we're all having to make these sacrifices, but we appreciate it. But he's actually like chilling on the beach and traveling when we've been telling people to not travel. So this is just like another example of sort of like gross hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do. And so currently, who knows by the time this comes out, people are calling for him to resign. They're calling.
He has resigned. It just came out 10 minutes ago. He resigned. Yeah.
Hot off the presses.
Wow.
Yeah, hot off the press. Yeah. So there you have it.
Is he heading back to St. Bart's? That's what I would do. He doesn't have to go back to work in 2021.
That's funny. He goes right back to Pearson.
Off the airport, back into the airplane.
Oh, that's funny. That'd be amazing if he did that. If he's like, fuck it, whatever. I got a timeshare down there that I want to make the most of.
I came back early because of this scandal. What a mistake.
Yeah. Do you think he told his wife, he'd be like, you know what? You should stay here because there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to have to resign and I'll be back in like 3 days. So just stay there.
Did he really come back to resign? Like he flew back?
Yeah.
Wow.
No. He came back. He did a press conference this morning where he was very sort of repentant and saying that, I made gross negligence with my decisions.
Did he have the zinc on his nose while he was giving the speech? the vacation hat?
No, but he was going to talk to Doug Ford. He's like, I'm going to see Doug right now. It's going to be a tough conversation. And then I guess it just came out that he resigned. So there you have it.
I'm actually surprised he resigned just because there's such like a... I'm surprised he wasn't more stubborn about it. Like, I made a mistake, but I'm keeping my position. Honestly, you'd think it's the only honorable thing to do.
I don't think it's his choice, though. I think it's Doug Ford's like, you got to resign. I think that's the way these things happen with any cabinet person. Whenever you hear like the Secretary of State or whatever, it's just like if the president or the premier or the prime minister is like, yo, bro, like if you're part of our party, you got to do what's best for the party. You got to go, and then you go. So I think he probably was fired, but then he got to say that
the dignity of resigning. And also Doug knew about it for the last 2 weeks, and didn't demand he come back. So that was something that Doug was being criticized for as well. Like Doug was like, I didn't know he went. He didn't tell me he went. I found out. I was disappointed. But then people were kind of like, well, wouldn't you tell him to get his ass back on a plane?
Well, one of my questions is like, I'm always interested when one of these kind of scandal breaks. If you were to like poll the population, how many people would actually be upset versus like a lot of people are like, whatever, I don't really give a shit, or what's the difference between him working there or at a cottage? Like, what do you think the splits are? I guess is my question, because there's like some people that are justifiably angry, and if you look at Twitter, you're going to see a lot of people that are very pissed off about it. But then in real life, do you think I really wonder how many people are actually offended by it? What would you guess, Shane?
I'd say it's 80% of people are just fascinated and like a good gossip story and want to grab the popcorn. And then the 10% of people who are really pissed are people who had planned to go on vacation. And then the rest are just trolls who are mad at everything and hop on that bandwagon.
That sounds about right. It did make it like The Guardian, like it made international
news. Yeah. My thing is, it's like these things don't surprise me because I feel like I'm so desensitized to different rules for different people in society that when I see news like this, I'm just like, I'm kind of like, that makes sense. I assume that's kind of going on in a lot of facets of life. That being said, I think he 100% needed to either get booted or resigned. Like if he got to keep the job, then I would have been I would have been annoyed for sure. I would never leave comments. I wouldn't get super riled up. I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep over it. But a part of me would be like, that fucking guy, if he got to keep the gig. So
but
it does feel like
leave
justice.
Before the lockdown, right?
That's a good question.
I think he knew the lockdown was coming, but I think he went. And I feel like the thing that was really egregious and bothered people was he obviously shot videos to deceive the public.
Yes, 100%.
Did you notice the little tree next to his Christmas video? It looked like a little branch that you might have found from a tropical tree. Like it did not look like a Christmas tree. It was very good.
Oh, really? No, I didn't notice that.
It was a palm tree. That's a weird choice. Finance minister.
Steel drums in the background.
Well, apparently he did a Zoom and he just used like one of those like green screen like backgrounds, like Parliament or something like that. And I don't know. I can't remember if it was in the article, it was either the Liberals or somebody tweeted like, is that waves we hear in the background of your Zoom? So clearly somebody knew the deal and they were kind of being pithy. I don't think that, you know what I mean? And they were kind of in this, it starts the snowball.
I thought they were joking and the joke just happened to be dead on the money.
That would be wild.
Who do you think leaked it? Do we know who leaked his vacation? That's interesting too. I wonder if it's like somebody from like the Liberals or the NDP or something. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, maybe the enemy was also vacationing.
They saw each other.
You son of a.
Yeah.
That'd be funny if they saw each other on the beach. Yeah. Jagmeet Singh is on the beach. He's like, you don't say anything. I won't say anything.
Yeah. In that case, though, no, it never gets out. It's just mutually assured destruction. So you both keep it quiet. Yeah.
I do appreciate how Canadian the scandal is. Whenever anything like this happens and like it's like a big news story, like it actually makes me feel more reassured about like how our government is run and the general like temperament of the people. Because if this is the kind of thing that is like whooping people up into a frenzy up here, it's just like, okay, we're okay. Like all things considered, because compared to like the chaos of the States, which it feels like politicians are doing like crazy ass shit all the time. This is like a guy, by the way, the guy was probably working all the time, like in St. Barts. It's not like he was just like fucking off like at the local bar in St. Barts getting wasted or something, like he's on a bachelor trip. He's probably working 14 hours a day. He just happened to have like a nicer walk in the morning. That like we can also maybe assume that. So it's funny that like it wasn't actually. I don't find it to be that personal.
This is
scandalous.
Kind of fishy. I'm expecting the background to drop down, Max, and we're going to see a beach.
Two walls just collapse.
Yeah, they just fall down. They bring him a Mai Tai.
Not right now.
Guys, say I'm practicing with you every day. Garage practice. People will believe it. I'll perpetuate it on the pod.
Oh my God.
Okay, here's a question. Do you think, I find when you see these kinds of stories where politicians are getting in trouble, it makes any other kind of like business person who's smart and likes attention and likes being in leadership positions that much less likely to run for politics? Because you can imagine there's a lot of business leaders that like run Canadian companies that are like, oh, I'm actually going to be staying in my Costa Rican home for the next few months and just working down there. Or, oh, I'll have to be in LA because my place is down there. There's some business, and you can make up some whatever bullshit excuse because no one's really holding you accountable anyway. And you can just go on and live your generally like privileged life as per usual. And so anyone who's like has been running a company and goes, nah, I'm thinking about running for office. They see that guy and he's getting dinged for going to St. Barts, and they go, never mind, fuck it. I don't want to do that anymore because I'm just under so much more scrutiny. Do you think that's like a thing that's happening more and more these days for possible like would-be politicians, Mike?
I think it's a deterrent for sure. I mean, this is kind of the larger argument that you might not get the brightest and the best going into, leadership, like public leadership or politics, because like you said, like the super savvy operators are like, I'd rather just own my own company and sort of, maybe I can affect change in other ways, but I don't want the scrutiny of sort of, the public. That being said, that's like you're getting paid with our tax dollars. That's what the money's for. Like we can scrutinize you, and I mean, I get what you're saying, Max, but I do think you're right. I think it's a deterrent. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like at one point it was better to be famous than rich or more fun. And now I feel like it's just more fun to be rich. And I think everyone can agree with that. Like there's just too much responsibility that goes with fame. And, we're all so fallible as humans, but you can't really slip up in any major way or you're almost like shunned for months at a time at a minimum.
No, that's a very good point, because you just like wonder just how everything is documented these days. And just like you hear stories back in the day of like politicians doing this or that, and professional athletes for that matter, just like public people could be a lot more private without everybody having a camera phone. It's like you just like hear these like crazy stories about like after hours bars or people just kind of misbehaving, or not even misbehaving, but just sort of like doing things that would be fine in a room but maybe not good on a camera. And
I was just watching a documentary. There's this Bee Gees documentary on Crave right now. Have you seen it?
I'm about 20. I have about 20 minutes left. It's fucking awesome though.
So like that stretch where they go to Miami and then they end up writing the crazy like 5 bangers that end up on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack or whatever. Like I just think about like that time, like Eric Clapton had been in Miami and he like wrote this record. Then they had the same management. So he tells them, he's like, listen, if you guys are in a funk, like go to Miami, get out of the UK, blah, blah, blah. They go there. They all end up like living there. They end up like migrating their whole family to Miami. But I just kept thinking when they showed sort of like the rise of disco and all of this stuff, like imagine being like a multimillionaire BG, like on South Beach in Miami in 1976. Like it's just like that was probably like the when fame was awesome. Like Shane's saying, like now it's like, I'd rather just have the money. I don't want to be famous. But when I think about like these Bee Gees guys, they just show them by the pool. I'm like, that is must have been such a fun time. And yeah, it's very fascinating.
James Harden wishes that he was a part of that generation.
Of course, yeah.
Honestly. Hey, but you know what? Honestly, guys, Shane, you need to watch this documentary. We could do a whole pod on this Bee Gees doc. It's so fucking good.
I have
Mike,
to see it, yeah.
Now I'm really building it up. Mike, but like some of the Beatles overlap. Like there's so many funny parts of that story, which I didn't know about. Like, which I was like, oh, I had no idea that this whole career before the disco stuff.
Is it better than the Eagles doc or same?
I think part one of that Eagles doc is like still one of the greatest like part ones.
No, I loved it.
I think this Bee Gees doc is very good. It's very good. I enjoyed the hell out of it, but I don't think it's like some like life-changing doc. And they skip over some stuff, and they're trying to tell the story of the three brothers, and then they bring in the younger brother Andy. So there's a lot to get in, but it's just like all of a sudden we're on a second marriage of one of the guys, and they jump around a lot, which is just how you have to do one of those things. But you have like Chris Martin talking about, you know, when the Bee Gees get the backlash. He's like, listen, we understand what it's like to get backlash because there's this roadmap. The Bee Gees, like, they didn't know. They're just like, wait, why does everyone hate us now? Because people hate disco? Like, and then their whole growth in the 60s, and it's cool. I definitely like, I recommend it. And I enjoyed it a lot. So I think it's definitely worth watching. Like Max said, we could do a whole
okay, maybe not a whole episode, but we could do a segment.
Yeah.
So Shane, next pod, let's talk about the Bee Gees and you watch
Got
it. Okay?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, you got 20 minutes left, Max. When you're done, text me, because there's a line near the end that's like, for me, that was like, I was like, it was a real kicker. I was like, whew. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
But actually, that kind of weirdly, one of the things we were going to do, because this is, I guess, we're recording it as a year-end pod, but it will probably be the first of the year for our listeners. We were going to do this thing where we were going to talk about one thing. Normally, we would totally review like the year that passed, 2020, whether it's like our top 5 movies, music, whatever. Instead, we decided, manager Ash had this great idea where maybe we don't want to look too far back. So maybe pick one thing that we loved from 2020. It can be any kind of thing that we enjoyed, whether it's a book or a movie or a show or music or whatever that might be. And then one thing we're looking forward to in 2020, so we can look ahead to 2021 as opposed to just sort of living in this last year that has been pretty dismal. Do you guys have the thing that you loved in 2020, the one thing, and the one thing you're looking forward to? Have you prepared this? Shaney boy, I know you've prepared this.
Okay, so I wrote some things down here. So for sure, I'm just going to list a couple things. Tiger King. Like everyone, It was on everyone's mind for a split second, but then it passed, right? And then it almost became too popular where it wouldn't be really cool to put that on this list. But at the time, it was the greatest thing in my life. I looked forward to it every single night. And then a close runner-up would be the Michael Jordan doc. And that I thought was so, again, I was looking forward to it every day. You hate to see it end. It probably peaked at the Rodman episode, but still, like I loved every second of it. Something I'm looking forward to in 2021 would be, I Think You Should Leave season 2 comes out. I'm really hoping for it. And How To with John Wilson. That's another show I really enjoyed in 2020 that I'm hoping.
Your boy produces that.
I know. Nathan Fielder produces it. It lived up to its expectations, and they renewed it. And I think in 2021 or early 2022, they're going to come up with another season. And then, of course, the Arkells rally, if that can happen in 2021, which, cross my fingers. But I don't know. We got any scoops on that, or we're just waiting to hear?
We're just waiting to hear from the government, so we'll see. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Like,
it was in the finance minister's hands, actually. So we'll be
now it's up in the air.
Yeah, have it at St. Bart's. That would be amazing. That'd be an awesome trip.
It'd almost be worth losing your job for.
Hey, I know you probably follow, just speaking of funny, quirky shows that we like, Nirvana, the band, the show, which we both love. Yeah. Jay McCarroll, who's one of the stars, he did the music for The Kid Detective, that movie with Adam Brody on it. Did you watch that?
I'm dying to see it, though. I hear it's very good.
Yeah, okay. I was
and they just released action figures for Nirvana, the show, the band, too, I noticed.
Oh, yeah, I saw that too. That's very cool.
But where the F is season 3 of the show? At JFL, we got to see a preview of it. Like, they actually they released a full episode that was not completed, but it was a full episode, and it was hilarious. And then we never heard of season 3 again.
Do you notice that Matt got kind of ripped? lately?
I saw a video, and he was actually making fun of his action figure. How he didn't feel like it represented how good he looked.
How he looks now?
Yeah. He has that type of like Adam Devine body type where he's kind of ripped and a little bit. I don't know how to describe it, like stocky and ripped.
Or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, some niche shit that no one cares about. Okay, let's carry on.
All of our listeners are now Googling his body. For me, 2020, so Shane saying The Last Dance is a great one. That was actually weirdly off my radar, even though we probably talked about it in 3 different pods. So clearly it was very present in our lives at the time. My runner-up, since we're doing runner-ups, was the movie Palm Springs. I loved Palm Springs.
I just watched that 2 nights ago.
Thoughts?
No, I loved it. It was way less funny than I thought it was going to be, but it really makes you think, about existence, which I like. Absolutely. I like to be tripped out in that way.
That's the thing. I kind of haven't really stopped. I think about it at least once a week, and so that was my runner up. But number one, and I never in a million years would have thought this would be number one for me. But maybe it was just that time in the pandemic, or that it caught me off guard, or that I had no expectations, and probably even lesser expectations, like low expectations. Was Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso made me like feel so good. And the first episode's clunky. They set the premise. The premise is stupid. But then once you sort of like by episode 3, it starts to work its magic on you, and it just exudes goodness.
The soccer movie?
Yeah. TV show. Yeah. On Apple. And it's with, Jason Sudeikis. And it's like, you maybe laugh out loud like once or twice an episode, but you're always smiling, and you always feel good, and you're just rooting for him. And in a year where like kind of shit just makes you feel bad all the time, you always read the news, this show continually made me feel good. So Ted Lasso is weird, and I never would have thought that would be my number one.
Is that a Randall recommendation, that one?
It got on my radar because Randall was on it super early, and then I've now like flipped it on to like as many people as I can, and I haven't had one person come back and say they didn't enjoy it. I'm actually really interested to know your take on it, Shane, because like I know your comedy sensibility, but this show is pretty saccharine. It's pretty sweet. You know what I mean? It's not like
that. I don't need to laugh.
I totally know that, but I was worried that you were going to be like, it's dumb or something like that. So in a weird way, I didn't flip it to you. I flipped it to my brother, who I don't think has still watched it. I flipped it to Max, who I know still hasn't watched it because he hasn't.
I watched the first episode and I didn't like it. I thought the first episode was clunky, and I was like, whatever, I don't give a shit. But now that you've said this, I'll give it a look.
This is the caveat. The first episode it's clunky. They have to set up the premise, and it seems stupid. But by episode 3, you just got to give it to episode 3, and then I think it does work its magic on you. So that's mine.
Did Sean Dawson watch it? Because he's a soccer guy.
Yeah, he
liked
enjoyed
it or no?
Yeah. Mike M, Sean,
that's good.
Jules, all of them. Which, by the way, I saw them. What night was it? 2 nights ago, because Sean put the TV in the backyard, and there was Raptors Philly game, and so we all sat in the backyard distance and hung out. And it's funny, all of those guys had listened to the most recent podcast. And you might be hearing this now, but like so we have these ads that are jumping in on the pod, and I've been getting notes from people. My brother actually, we talk about my brother being all of our harshest critic. He was like, what is up with the placement of the ads? But he said it in a lot more sort of a cutting way. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, we deliver the pod and then they drop it in. But I think we need to start building in time code whooshes. Like, you know what I mean? Anyway, so for our listeners who might be like, for all we know, my voice is getting cut off right now to go to an ad and then it will come back. We're sorting out the timing of that. But anyway.
Well, that was my fear when the ads started, because I hear other ones do it and it just sounds not very professional, and it really throws off the flow.
Mike, let's just say, hey, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to hear Max's year-end list. Go for it. Let's see if they do it.
Okay, but I still haven't done what I'm looking forward to, Max.
Oh, sorry. Okay. No, do that. Just basically,
now
when we
Max
come back from the break, I'm going to tell...
that ruins the flow.
Okay, quickly, the thing I'm looking forward to most by far in 2021 is the Peter Jackson Beatles documentary Get Back, which just released their trailer of all of this restored footage that they found in like some Dutch warehouse, like over 60 hours of footage like years ago. They didn't know who was going to sort of take on this project. Peter Jackson has been going through all this footage, and that sort of 5-minute trailer of just sort of like a random montage of moments got me so happy and excited for this movie that's the thing I'm by far looking forward to most. All right, and now, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to get Max's favorite of 2020 and what he's most looking forward to in 2021. Whoosh. And we're back. Maxie, why don't you let us know what you got on your list?
Well, I did like How To a lot. The one that Shane mentioned, How To with John Wilson. That was very, very good. I am very excited about the Beatles documentary, as Mike mentioned. So there's definitely some overlap in our interest. Did you guys see Moonbase 8? It's like 6 episodes. It's
Tim
on
Heidecker?
Crave. Tim Heidecker, Fred Armisen, John C. Reilly. It's very like easy, very silly, classic them. It's not trying to be anything like spectacular, but I watched the season twice just because it just made me feel so good. It was like one of those like sort of in a different way, like the Ted Lasso thing where you're just like, I just kind of want to turn off my brain, hang out with these people, have some laughs, and just feel like good and warm. And so I loved Moonbase 8, but it's not gonna like make you barrel over in stitches or anything. It's like it's very just like them being silly, which is great. I think one of my favorite moments of 2020 was going to see Tenet in the movie theater. I love going to the movies so much. I know we've talked about this before. We talked about the last pod. Actually, shout out to Sean Menard, who messaged me because he listened to the pod, and he said that he's like, I know what you're talking about, the magic of going to the theaters. And I really missed that. And I think the only movie I saw in theaters since whatever March would have been Tenet. And I think, did I see it twice? I did see it twice. It was in that like window of time in the summer where the movie theaters were open and it seemed safe to go. So I really like that. I May Destroy You. I know I mentioned that. That feels like a lifetime ago, but that came out in the beginning of the year. Shane, did you ever get around to watching it?
Oh yeah, I watched the whole thing. Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Yeah. But I'm gonna watch Ted Lasso. I watched Palm Springs like last year. Everybody seemed to watch it this year, but it came out last year, did it not?
It came out this year, but the problem is it came out on Hulu in the States. So in order to watch it when it came out, you might have to do some fishy business. It is now out on Prime in Canada.
Okay.
It just came out like last week, or like Shane said. Like you probably watched it on Prime, right, Shane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did watch it on Prime legally.
The last thing I want to recommend is I read a lot of like sports journalism and political journalism. I don't read a ton of fiction. And Book Club Maddie gave me a book called The Index of Self-Destructive Acts. And he said, this is like my favorite book I've read. You're going to love it. And Eli, my other buddy who plays drums in the Alley Band.
We got a name.
We got a name. Yeah, the Alley Band. He loved the book too. I was like, okay. And the book is like sort of a combination of like many of my interests. It's like the main character is like a Nate Silver-esque pollster who comes from like the Midwest and moved to New York to take a job writing for a big like kind of New Yorker kind of magazine. And he's doing a profile on this sort of like disgraced columnist who used to work for like what would be the New York Times. And there's like race and class and baseball in it and New York City. Basically, like it reminds me of my dad a lot and all the things that my dad and I like to talk about. And I have a hard time getting into novels, but I am racing through this one. I have about maybe 60 pages left, and it has been one of these books that's just kind of on your mind all the time. And I don't really get that very often, but like when you are consumed by a book, it's a different kind of feeling than a TV show or a movie that you come back and think about. And you're just kind of like excited to get home and open the book. It's such a novel feeling, but no pun intended.
It's a special feeling. 100%.
It's a special feeling. So if you have similar Twitter interests as me, which is like following kind of like stat nerds that are interested in sports and politics, if you care about like the sort of journalism scene and like what writers like to think and talk about, and if you're interested in New York, then this book is totally for you. It's really, really good. I'm
gonna get it. If you and Book Club Maddie are both hard reco, I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's awesome. And actually, the name, the Index of Self-Destructive Acts, it sounds kind of dramatic, but it's actually a term coined by Bill James. I'm not giving anything away because it's literally in the first page of the book. Bill James, who's the godfather of sports analytics, sort of like the godfather of the Moneyball movement. He came up with that term to describe when pitchers in a baseball game make unforced errors, like commit balks or errors of their own, and you add up all those things, and that is the index of a self-destructive act. but of course it relates to like all sort of the personal behavior of the characters in the book. So it's very good.
Sweet. So that's our 2020/2021 wrap up.
Mm-hmm. And I have a good new podcast too that I started listening to. It's called This Is Important, and it's by the guys who created Workaholics, including the director.
Sean mentioned that.
He talked about this the other night, Sean Dawson. He was saying it was amazing.
Yeah, it's really hilarious. He recommended it to me also, so I checked it out. And he's like, you'll laugh out loud. And, sometimes you get these reviews and they just don't live up to it. But within the first 3 minutes of listening to the latest episode, I was howling. Like, it was like midnight and I was waking up the baby laughing.
Are you starting from the most recent episode or are you starting from the beginning?
Yeah. I'm going most recent and working my way backwards.
Okay, cool.
Sweet. All right. Well, that's all our recos. We'll move on to another topic, I guess. We're just breezing through this episode, guys.
Meaty stuff here.
Meaty stuff. All right. This is the case of the missing violin. So there was a violin in Toronto, a violinist, a student / professional musician who I guess was on the subway with his very, very old violin, 263-year-old violin that is worth in 5 figures, he confirmed. He left it on the subway. And then I guess he had to jet off to Vancouver, but he reported to the police. And so people, it was in the news that basically if anyone finds this violin, it had a very sort of distinct red case, I guess, or at least an identifiable red case. Please report it, et cetera, et cetera. He really wanted to get it back in time for Christmas. A week later, the violin made its way. It was recovered. He's not back from Vancouver yet, but essentially, I guess some unidentified 50-year-old dude found it on the subway. There's photos of him coming up like an escalator out of a subway station, and the police were like, "Hey, can anyone identify this guy? He clearly, he has this violin that he found on the subway." I guess that guy tried to sell it to a cab driver. And at that point, the cab driver calls the police because he felt like the whole thing seemed fishy. The police come. It's the violin. I guess that guy left. So that guy still hasn't been identified or found, the guy who initially recovered it. But ultimately, for this musician / student, he got his very expensive and ancient violin back, which is a nice, heartwarming story.
So when it happened, I thought it would be recovered. I think the chances that a sociopath happens to be on the subway, sees the violin, takes it, and then figures out a way to move it in the black market and sell it for a lot of fucking money in Europe somewhere was very small. So the other alternative is that maybe somebody who's a little down and out picks it up and just tries to make a quick buck on it. And from experience, I can tell you that my house got robbed in Hamilton a few years ago, and they took a laptop and a passport and some other shit. And the cop who's reporting on it said, no matter what somebody steals, they will try to sell it for $80 on the street market, because that's usually the cost of their next hit. A lot of these people obviously have addiction issues. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So when I thought about the violin, I was like, whoever picked this up, there's a good chance they're going to try to sell it for $80 because that's sort of what will get them, to their next fix. Of course, when you read the story, he sells it to the cab driver for $100. Yeah. This guy has no clue that this.
Well, that's the Toronto markup. 80 in Hamilton, 100 in Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. So I was actually feeling pretty good that this person would return it, unless it just ended up in a dumpster, which is just bad luck. If someone just gets it and chucks it into a dumpster, then you're kind of screwed. But otherwise, if it's getting bought and sold in Toronto, somebody was going to come up with it who had a decent, head on their shoulders and was going to, look it up, as this cab driver did. He looked up the serial number. He saw it was missing on the news and it got returned. Shane, would you have had the same instinct as me to assume that it will be found? Because I have a long history of recovering lost items successfully. Do you think it was going to be, when the story broke, would you have guessed that he would have got it back in a week?
So if it was me who lost the violin, I would think it is obviously gone forever. Even if somebody had it and sold it for $80, I would think it would be damaged or lost again. But with wallets, I've had very good luck, because wallets with IDs and everything only have value to the person who lost it. But I didn't read this story. I just found about it now on this podcast, so I haven't thought about it a ton. Yeah, there was some stories I just jumped to and I deep dove, and then somehow this one fell between the cracks.
Well, we can move it on, but Mike, have you had anything?
Well, I have a story about something.
Oh, okay. Tell us about that.
His opportunity to tell his story because Max is keeping things moving. Please, Shane, tell us.
In grade 7 or 8, I was walking through my hallway of middle school, and I collected Pogs. I loved Pogs, but I would never play them because there was this rumor that if you kept your Pogs in like 10 to 20 years, it would quadruple in value or be like very, very valuable, more than quadruple in value. And then a kid his name was Adam, he smacked them all out of my hands and they went flying all over the hallway. And then you'd think that the other kids who weren't the guy who knocked it out would pick them up and give them to me. But everyone picked them up and stole them.
Whoa.
Like every individual kid just stole them and scrambled. And I was so ruined by it. And it made me a little bit cynical anytime I lose something that people aren't going to return it. And then I went to my mom. I was just bawling my eyes out because I spent forever collecting these Pogs. And then she went to like Toys R Us and spent like $100 and returned the Pogs. Like replace the amount of Pogs. But yeah, they ended up being worthless in the end. It's like Beanie Babies. They didn't increase in value, but...
I saw a tweet where someone said like their father like wasted their family fortune investing in Beanie Babies in like the 90s or so, like ruined their family. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was notorious for, like I would use, cause when I commuted to Toronto, for work and like the first couple of years I worked at Much, maybe the first year or whatever, I always had a book. So I would like, but then what would happen is it's like Justin Stockman or somebody would want to go for a drink after work. And so I would go for a pint after work, but I would have my book, which I would plan to read on the go bus back to Hamilton. But the problem is we'd sit and have like 6 pints and I would just leave my book at the bar. So I've left so many books at bars that I just never finished because I refused to buy the book again. So that was a common theme in my early days.
This really dates you though, because this is pre-smartphones and pre-podcast probably, right? Because otherwise, you'd probably just throw a podcast in, or you'd be on your phone looking at Twitter or whatever. Do you miss reading the books though? Like, do you?
Absolutely.
Or I guess you lost them a lot of the time. But
I will say even after like podcasts, because we were back here in Hamilton for a bit in like 2016, 17, I would still read. Like there was something about that the train ride or the bus ride where it'd be the one time where you could sit and you could like read something. But yeah, I miss that. Like that time's all gone now. Like, you know, I know Shane would always lament like the commute, but I was always a little bit envious that he would get to consume. He'd be like, oh, I just listened to this whole pod, or I'm going to listen to this, or for Pedestal, he'd be able to like knock out an hour of a movie that we were going to review. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, that time is valuable and you don't miss it until it's gone.
When you're reading a book at the bar, do you feel like a loser at all? Or do you feel cool in a way, like you're embracing the potential perceived loserosity of it?
There was a stretch there where like especially when I was like single, I would like go for like to Milestones for lunch, and I would just like crack open a book and have lunch and sit there.
Yeah, I remember that.
I didn't feel like a loser. I kind of liked it.
I think the milestone part makes you sound like a loser. But if you go to like, if you go to some like Irish, if you go to some Irish sounding pub and you have a Guinness and you were reading some like old looking book, it doesn't have to be an old book, but it just has to be really like tattered.
You would do that too, though.
Who, me?
No, Mike would do that too. What was that bar called? The Fifth, right?
No,
what was it called?
Oh yeah, I've lost quite a few books at the Friar. Well, that's the thing. It's like for the first hour and a half, I'm reading, and they're like, "Oh, look at that man! Is he an intellectual?" As I sip my pint, but then in hour 3.5, it's like, "Oh, that sleep." Exactly. Yeah,
that was a pillow.
The book was boring. It wasn't the pints. But what about you? You lose anything, Max?
Yeah. I mean, I lose wallets, stuff all the time, and they usually get returned. I lost one earlier in the pandemic. I was going for a jog or running around Queen's Park, and then I left it there. Someone returned it. But I was reminded of a story. We were on tour in England because a lot of bands get robbed. You always hear these heartbreaking stories about bands like having their shit stolen. And we were in Ireland. And then we had a week off before we had to be in Germany. And so the plan was we were all kind of going to fuck off and go other places. And our tour manager, Dave, was going to drive the van with all of our rented gear. And it was a rented van as well, from Ireland, hang out in England for a couple of days, get back on the road, and then get to Germany. So it was sort of his paid duty to go to make that trip. I was in Portugal. I think Mike had flown to Italy, or he flew somewhere else. Everybody was kind of in different spots, and we get a text being like, "Guys, the van's been stolen." And we're like, "Oh shit!" But it was a weird one, because on one hand, it's like, okay, how is this going to complicate things for us? But on the other hand, none of our personal belongings were really in there, because we rented probably 95% of the stuff. There might have been like a couple like of our own personal guitars, but for the most part, there wasn't actually anything that that we owned in the van. So it was one of these funny moments. It was just like sitting in Portugal, finding out that the van had been stolen, but there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And also, you kind of don't even really care that much. Like, insurance is going to take care of it. It's not really my problem. It sucks for Dave. Dave is like fucking having it. Anyway, in the van, they had these tracking devices that are like put underneath the van. And at some point, it went off, and it showed where the van was, and it was in a neighborhood in London, like not too far from where Dave, who's a British guy, where Dave lives. So Dave brought a buddy with him, and it was like he described in this whole like heist like thing where he had to like go to the van and try to find it, and he had to call the cops, and it was like this whole ordeal. And they got the van back, and all the stuff was inside it, so nothing was lost, and everything was okay. So
oh wow!
And so we came out on top of that one. It was good.
Would you be pissed if you lost song lyrics, or is that not that important to you?
Oh, good question. Because I like to live my life not worrying about losing anything. Like, I can't really think of anything I own that if I lost it, I'd be sad about. I'd be annoyed if I like lost my iPhone, obviously, or my laptop, because that would be just another email to the Apple people that we know, just to give me another free one.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's annoying copying and pasting those.
Copying and pasting. Good callback.
Oh, I put the wrong product in there. Shit.
But I think you're right. I think the one thing that I get frustrated with is if I have an idea for a song or something like that, and I don't write it down, and then I lose it. That's why I'm always like in the street talking to myself through my voice notes. I use voice notes like all the time. Ash actually has some like good video of us like walking around, and I'll have an idea, and then I'll just start like. Yesterday, actually, like on Yonge Street in Toronto, I was like, I had this idea for like a Rolling Stones like kind of song, and I was like, oh, ooh, 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 and I was just like singing, and I was like kind of going through a tunnel, and people were just like looking at me, and I was like, I'm getting work done right now. Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah, let's get to Shane Surprise.
Love it. Let's.
Or do we need another commercial break? Do we throw to another commercial break?
Before we get to the Shane Surprise, let's go to a commercial break. All right, everybody, back from the break. Now it's time for the Shane Surprise.
By the way, I hope they don't listen and they just throw the ad in anywhere. So none of this.
Oh, that's the best. There's no way these ads are going to line up.
Yeah. Like they're listening. It's clearly a robot throwing it in. If anyone was listening, why would they put the ads where they're putting them?
I now just picture the robot listening to this pod, and it's single tier. I enjoy your guys and your camaraderie.
That's funny.
I was waiting for you to cue me up. Now I'm listening. Okay. Okay. So have you guys heard about this Hilaria Baldwin story? Or should I say Hillary Baldwin? Huh?
It's
Mike, you know
it's
about
a big
this?
story. Oh yeah, it's all over the internet. So I'm excited that this.
What
is
are some of the broad strokes of it?
Well, Hilaria Baldwin is married to Alec.
No, I want Shane to
Oh,
describe
Shane
it.
set it up. All right.
I know. I was just
So
this is more
Hilaria.
of a test. Does Shane know the story? Okay.
So Hilaria, or should I call her Hillary, has been lying. Is that not her name?
But Hilaria is just funny. Like her situation is hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah.
But her real name's Hillary. So she's been lying to people, acting as if though she was born and raised in Spain. And English, she was telling people, was her second language. So much so that she was entrenched in this lie, because she was actually born in Boston, that she appeared on a cooking show, and she's describing the fruits and vegetables on the table that she's going to be cooking with. She's like, we have a tomato, and we have a, how you say, what's the English word for this? And the woman's like, cucumber? She's like, yes, of course, the cucumber. And then it turns out she was just born in Boston, and she's just like, like I'm more Spanish than her. So it really got me thinking, like, how do you perpetuate this lie? Her parents are both fairly well-known people, both Like English is her parents' first language. Her friends came out of the woodwork recently, though, like her high school friends, to say that she's a total fraud. But more importantly, I was wondering, is this something to be mad about? And would we be mad if we found out, like, we all know Mike loves being 1/4 Indonesian. Would we be mad if we found out that was a total lie and he actually wasn't exotic at all? Or would it be funny?
It's a great question.
It is. Well, I think the reason why people, one, it is just sort of a bewildering story. You're like, did you need to do any of this? I think people they're a little more rightfully upset when like the leader of a BLM movement is actually white. That's actually a true story. I think there's a woman.
Rachel Dolans?
Is this the woman
Rachel Doles?
in Seattle who is like very active in the movement, and she sort of identified as black, but she
had like the perm.
Yeah. So that
there's a documentary about that woman though, and it really makes you rethink the whole thing. It explains her entire life story. It changes your perspective totally on that, and it makes her way less of a joke. It was on Netflix for a while though.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I'll check that out. Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know. What was the two questions?
I think the thing that people don't like, I think the thing is, it's like she's sort of built this identity and she's monetized it. Not that she's married to Alec Baldwin, who does very well, but she's like become this Instagram celebrity with her 5 children and sort of her cooking and all of these sort of public appearances. A huge part of that identity is built on sort of this like Spanish American experience that she sort of packages and sells as this authentic thing. I think for people, when it comes out that she's just kind of like, that trope about the American girl that goes to England for the summer and then she comes back and she has the English accent for the next, you know what I mean? And like that kind of like, so there's the appropriation. So if you are Spanish American that has had like, it's like she's taken up a spot and an identity that could be for somebody who's authentically Spanish American. That would be the bent. That's the sort of anger about the whole thing. Did you see the clip too of like Baldwin, like on a Letterman appearance? He's like, my wife, who is from Spain. And he sort of, clearly they enjoy the narrative. It's a huge part of whatever
she was saying that back in her childhood or whatever in Spain, she didn't have a television, so she didn't know who Alec Baldwin even was when they met.
Oh my God. Like, outrageous.
But it's weird because too, she was saying that like now that this story has blown up, gone viral, she came clean, and her excuse was that she's the type of person who wherever she goes, she just adapts to the accent and the language so much so she loses herself in it. But if she's from Boston, was she like, get in the car? Like, when she's in Boston, is she like that?
Did you read the New York Times piece where when Baldwin, I think she was serving, she was like a server in some restaurant, and Baldwin is like, come over. He's like, I must know you. Tell me about yourself. And when you're,
that's a good Baldwin.
When you read it in the New York Times piece, you read it in Baldwin's voice as well. Like, and I'm just like, I can
you're ravishing.
I can totally see it. I must know you. So maybe when she sits down, she's like, and she obviously knew who fucking Alec Baldwin was. Is she like, how do I become more interesting to this international celebrity, millionaire celebrity? And maybe at that point she's like, listen, my family's vacation in Spain a ton. I am familiar with the place. I go there for, let's say generously, she goes there for 3 weeks every summer since she was 12 years old. So she's going to have an affinity for it. She speaks the language, all this stuff. Maybe to make herself more interesting to this guy who, is very famous. She goes, well, actually I'm from Spain. My family's from Spain, which just sounds more interesting than I'm from Boston and my parents are like, upper middle class people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you're in there, and then Baldwin, like now you're at the wedding, now you're having the kids, you can't really give up the lie at that point because Baldwin's all in on this exotic sort of narrative. And then now here we are today, and it would seem rather embarrassing, the whole thing.
Yeah, tactically, it was a really smart move because you're totally right. I think if he meets her and she's just like a hot chick from Boston, like, is he as interested? He probably is not, right? Like, he's just like, oh, you're from Spain? This is kind of cool. This is not something I see every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I do identify with Hilaria a little bit.
Of course, because your real name's Robert, and then you took Max as a name, which is the most Jewish name possible. You're not even Jewish, are you?
Okay, well, that was my second admission I was going to talk about. By the way, I did not take Max. My parents have been calling me Max since I was before I was born. They were calling me Max.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, they decided to put Max in my middle name. Robert is my first name. I've always been very open about that. The thing I will say though, is that so the band started at McMaster University. When we have to put in like, the MySpace, like, where are you from? Or when you're like trying to apply to go into music festival, like, where's the band from? You couldn't possibly put Toronto, Guelph, London, Mississauga, Newmarket, which is where all the band members are from. We just said we're from Hamilton. And so, did you say a lie?
Yeah. It's easier to tell the lie. I'm saying, yeah, I'm with you.
Well, it wasn't a lie. It was just sort of where the band was born. The band was formed in Hamilton. And so anyway, the band has since gone on, and I think a lot of people in town are proud of us. And what this awkward thing happens all the time, though, where somebody goes, oh, you guys are a bunch of blue-collar Hamiltonian guys. What high school did you go to? What high school did you go to? What high school did you go to? And then I always have to be like, well, my friends went to McNabb. And I'm like, West Mountain? I got some friends who went to Churchill in the East End, too. And how about that? And then I just try to keep the conversation moving because I'm just so embarrassed that I grew up in downtown Toronto and I never went to high school or elementary school in Hamilton. So I identify with Hilaria.